Это un manicomio! Вы хотите меня видеть? Да. Идите в спортивные, рабочие видите, и принесите мне. Avenge me! Avenge me! The boys! Don't cry! Hold it back!
All that hate's gonna burn you up, kid. Keeps me warm.
Well, blindfolds, as far as the Geneva Convention, I never heard of it.
Is in bloom, transmissions will resume. I try to push, try to keep us all down, hope that we will never see the truth around. Another promise, another scene, another package like to keep the captain breed. All green belts wrapped around our minds, and endless red tape to keep the truth confined.
12 o'clock, Americans, another day closer to victory. And for all of you out there on or behind the lines, this is your song.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for tuning in to You Have Tread on Me Radio. Tonight we're going to have Dave on. We're going to be talking about comms. I know Dave is a ham operator, and if any of you in the chat room are ham operators or anything like that, let me know. Tonight we are simulcasting on United We Strike Radio. So special shout out to all of you guys. If you do want to participate in our chat room so I can see if you have any specific questions for me, questions for Dave, or our guest later will be Amelia Foxwell, come on over to the website, youhavetreadonme.com/radio, and we have a chat room there where I can see you. The toll-free lines are still down. So if you have any questions, anything like that, put it in the chat room. I'll be watching that tonight. And if you want to come on, feel free. I'd love to have a guest on. Just drop your name in Skype, and we'll bring you on through there. Other than that, how's everything going down there in south of the Mason-Dixon there, Dave?
Soggy. It's been very soggy. We've had a lot of rain and a lot of storms. Up until just this week, certain areas around here got close to 30 inches of rain. We were very busy with the National Weather Service Skywarn net for a great many days, chasing the storms and taking in damage reports, which Monday before last were pretty widespread. We had a lot of trees. That was a bad day to be a tree around here. Luckily, we escaped that any loss of life here. I attribute that mostly to the fact the storms came in early afternoon and people were still awake and alert. When we have the same kind of weather in the middle of the night, it's usually a different story, which is, very unfortunate. And I think, it's probably one of the contributing factors of what happened, as the storms moved off and hit Mississippi and Alabama and Tennessee and caused such, widespread destruction and loss of life there.
Well, good part to what I'm bringing Amelia on is they recently sent out some trucks and supplies out there, so we will be talking about that later on tonight. Once again, what we're going to be talking about mostly tonight is comms, gear, and things that we can do to prepare now while we still have time. We don't have much time, unfortunately, before things start going south, if you will, but we do have time. So I guess first we'll start off with what we can do. I know through ham operators, you can start networking with like-minded people across the country, and I know a lot of militia commanders and officers, otherwise statewide groups or small town groups or whatever. They're starting to get the hint, ham would be a good thing to have. I don't personally know too much about what goes into licensing and privileges and all those other things, so maybe Dave, you could help me and the listeners out. With licensing, there's some sort of privilege that you get, obviously, with broadcasting. Are there things that, when something bad happens, would ham radios be out of the picture completely, or still operable, or how would that work?
Still very operable. Most of our equipment, as far as the repeaters and base stations and whatnot, are backup power. We're a energy backup aware group, that's for sure, because we often have a lot of storms to knock things down. In fact, through the storms this last week, our repeaters were operating on battery backup and generator, then battery backup again, and we stayed communicating the entire time. The licensing, let's talk about that for a second, is really actually pretty easy. You can start getting information from arrl.org, and I'll look into the question pools. It's all a multiple choice test. They phased out the Morse code requirements from old days, which makes it a whole lot easier to get in. But even for the last 20 years, they've had the no-code technician, where you can get the full access to all of the VHF and UHF privileges by just taking a couple of little tests. So they're not that long. They are really pretty easy overall, and they give you the questions, the pool of questions that are going to be on the test. You won't know which ones are the pool, but if you study the pool and you can answer all the questions, then you're sure to ace the test. It's not difficult. The license itself is free unless you want a vanity call sign, where you can choose your own call sign, and I think that's like $7 a year, and the license periods are for 10 years. The normal way people get into this is that they find their local clubs, and they have what's called volunteer examiners, which will usually give tests over weekends. Sometimes they even give classes that you could attend to prepare for the test. So it's really actually pretty easy. And once you're licensed, you can keep renewing it every 10 years, and it's absolutely 100% free.
Well, that's good. I mean, that's something that we, as a militia community, could definitely utilize, especially now while we still have time to train. Doing things, just recently came up with this. You could do even training on the ham. I'm sure this is nothing new to you, Dave, but... No, not at all. We generally have lots of training exercises as amateur radio operators preparing for all sorts of eventualities, whether it's, severe weather. We have this NL11 earthquake drill coming up this next week. All sorts of stuff that we're always involved in. In the emergencies, when all other communication's down, the ham radio community is still communicating with each other, even if it's via contingent means. We always have backup plans for our backup plans, and always have a way to get a piece of information from point A to point B. And we also have access to the HF bands, which are below 30 megahertz, which, depending on time of day, you can get the ionosphere skip and pretty much talk around the world directly without having to have any repeaters. For tactical stuff, it may not be the best possible venue, as far as using ham for tactical operations. However, I think it would be critical to have access to that, because when communications are down and things are just going all sorts of, wonkified, it's always very useful to stay in touch with a community of people that is well connected and well informed. Right. I mean, that's that's one thing that a lot of people don't really understand as of late, is that if you can't carry a firearm, if you can't own one legally, then you're no use to the militia. Well, that's completely wrong. We will need people to operate these radios, like we're talking about now, and this is good, useful, effective training that we can participate in while we still have time. training on codes, operational security, things like that. I know a group, I'm not going to mention any names or anything else like that, but they do a scenario training. They hold scenario FTXs. And basically you get a call and you load up and you get going to the rally point, bug out position, whatever the group designates. That's something that could be utilized with ham radios. You get a certain distress call or a stress code or something like that, and you go from there. So this ham radio and other radio things like that, it's very underestimated, and unfortunately I don't personally see it as much as I would like to amongst the militia groups. So when something bad does happen, sorry, I have to take away for a second. Randy just said our new committees of correspondence. That's a great point. It could be the next Paul Revere and his midnight ride, things like that. Sorry to get off track there. What kind of training ideas, specifically for militia groups, would you say we could use with the ham radios? What kind of training? What kind of things would need to be trained on? What kind of things need to be memorized and all that stuff?
Well, first of all, getting into ham radio will give you a fundamental understanding of how the communications works, both for HF and local point-to-point communication using simplex and repeaters. And that base knowledge is going to give you the ability to apply that to a lot of other scenarios, outside of just the ham bands themselves, dealing with the FRS, GMRS radios, Marine band, any other kind of communications that you're going to endeavor to try to use. The same technical theories apply, so it's a really good primer for people that aren't familiar with radio to get in and understand how radio works and have enough understanding in which they can operate the equipment and deal with problems as they may arise with the equipment, because they have a base understanding of how it all works. For most of the training exercises, you probably end up just going simplex, direct, because you're not going to be widespread, but you may be able to get involved with some amateur radio groups that would like to be part of your communications training and train using one of the repeaters. I would definitely not just try to jump in there and usurp equipment without having everybody on board, because you want the cooperation and goodwill of the amateur radio community when communications are falling apart, because you will be able to rely on them to get information about other areas, past traffic here and there, check on your loved ones in another state, any number of different things that we practice on a regular basis.
Yeah, there's a couple things here. Randy in the chat room, not sure what tech we can use for comms that is safe for sensitive info. And that is exactly correct. It needs to be something to the effect of a warning order or...
Oh, yeah. With the RF, radio frequencies, even if you've got a highly directional antenna, it's still going to bleed out in all directions, and it can be received pretty much by anybody. So anything that goes over radio like that, whether it's amateur radio, CB, FRS, GMRS, commercial radio, you have to be very mindful of that you're talking in the open and have means of conveying information out in the open without its real intent being derived. But there are other things that you can do with technology to get secure point-to-point communications. For example, it is quite possible to modulate both voice and data over infrared laser beams. Now, at night, those are going to stand out like a sore thumb if somebody's got night vision, but who in the hell wears night vision during the day? So during the daytime, you could be, point-to-point relaying via laser beam, all sorts of information, and you're going to be pretty much secure on that because there's no way to intercept it without actually interrupting the beam, at which point you would very well know that, hey, wait a minute, some monkey business is going on here, and you know to shut up at that point, because they'd have to actually get something in the path of the beam in order to capture any of the information. And if they don't know it's there in the first place, they don't know to look for it. So it could be quite covert, actually. The only drawback with that is that it needs line of sight. There are other radio technologies which do have encryption, although none of those encryption technologies are actually officially allowed on amateur radio bands. So, having said that, you got to exercise a little bit of caution there. There's spread spectrum and trunking technologies and all sorts of other stuff that's hard to follow. But the people that have the resources and the technology, if they're the ones you're worried about listening on you, they best be careful and act accordingly. Pretend that it's completely out in the open. You can have traffic that sounds quite routine and innocuous with embedded messages in it that only you and your team will understand, and nobody else will even think twice of it. We'll just think it's, this or that. We're talking about going fishing or something like that, and it means something entirely different, but you got to decide that on the front side. So you've got a different language, so to speak, of, things to convey secret meaning, and I would do it as stealthily as possible. So, the messages, if they're just heard by anybody that's not in the know of what it actually is, it's just going to blow it off as something routine, or a couple of people just bullshitting about something.
Yeah. I don't want to get too far into this because this is going to be for next week when I have Smiter back on for another episode of the Zombie Nazi Survival Guide, as I like to call it. But yeah, the special operations groups or any kind of anything that needs proper sensitivity, that needs proper OPSEC because it's sensitive, either needs to be exactly like what you said. How's the weather up there? Cold and rainy, kind of thing. Something that's very,
exactly,
like you said, innocuous, because it's way too easy to intercept radio waves, especially CB and ham. So things, you need to be low-tech about it, especially if you're, like I said, if it's sensitive and it needs to be kept quiet. All codes can be broken. You cannot put sensitive stuff out in the air. I like that laser beam idea that you just mentioned. I could go into another thing of distraction, diversion, and things like that, but I'm going to touch on that in future shows. But really, $7 a year for a vanity name or a free handle. The licensing is free. I'm sure some places are going to charge you to take the class or whatever.
Yeah, it's usually just a donation. It could be anywhere from, $5 to $15. And it just kind of covers their time for, taking time out of their life to come down and put on a class or hold a test for you, which is well worth it. It's a one-time thing. Once you pass all your tests, you can take the test for technician, general, and extra, all in the same day, all three tests, and go all the way up to extra class, and get all privileges everywhere that amateurs have on the same day for the, same fee. So, in my opinion, you might as well go for the gusto and take as much of it at the same time as you can. And then from then on out, the license is free. And unless you want a vanity call, I'm just as happy just getting an assigned call and just rolling with it. That's what most people do. This vanity call thing's a relatively new thing to amateur radio, where you can, select a, call sign. They probably actually make you give them a list, and you get the first available. But you can look the call signs up on the internet and find out which ones are available. So there's really no point in worrying about that.
Right. I mean, these are things that we can do now, even to people who are on budgets, and that's going to come up with my next point is where can we acquire these things? And you had mentioned, I believe it was on one of the shows. I think it was when the Sons of Liberty, the Illinois Sons of Liberty, were on. You said go up to a swap ham fest, which is basically a swap meet. You could walk away with some very decent gear for couple $100.
You'd be surprised, what you can get off the flea market tables. You can use ARL.org to find your local clubs. Your local clubs will know about all the various Hamfest swap meets in the area, and then just go check them out. And definitely be ready to test the equipment off the flea market tables before you walk away from it, because it's a as-is kind of thing, and you want to actually be able to understand the technology enough to give it a quick whirl, make sure that it works right. So when you get it and try to deploy it, it's actually going to function properly. Sometimes you can get some things with some problems. But again, that's what the rest of the ham community is for. We're a bunch of tinkerers and radio repairers. So if you make friends out there in the ham community, you'll probably find somebody that can help you repair any equipment. You may be able to pick up a radio that doesn't work, deliberately, sold as not working for, $10, and with a little bit of help and, $15 worth of parts, get a $300 radio up and running, if you're willing to spend the time and effort on it.
Right. I mean, this is something that I had mentioned this last week. The dump pouch is a $10 accessory you can get on the internet off of Surplus website or at your local Surplus store. $10. And in the long run, what's it going to do? You're going to have your magazines available to you when you need them most. For all of you who weren't tuned in last week, the men in Mogadishu in the Black Hawk Down conflict, they got ammo resupply. They got a supply drops. They got pallets of ammo dropped into the streets, and they recovered it, opened up the cans, and it was in stripper clips and loose ammo. They had decided to do speed reloads and be sexy about it, and they had no mags. All of their mags were on the streets. So a $10, $15 investment will save your ass in the long run. This is something that applies directly to what we're talking about tonight. Pick up one that is not working intentionally, buy a few pieces, and you have yourself a working, in great condition radio for $50. And this will keep. And
you don't even have to get the non-functional ones. Like I said, you can get some pretty fantastic older equipment for next to nothing. Sometimes you'll find a deal on those old Motorola radios that are still on the business band that they're selling. It's not all ham gear that gets sold there, and you can pick those things up for a couple dollars a piece. They still work. They're ugly. They're clunky. They're big. But you can bludgeon a super robot ninja zombie Nazi to death with it and still transmit on the damn thing. They're some of the most rugged radios out there. So it's just a matter of getting a little bit more familiar with, the available technologies out there. Do a little research before you go hit the swap meets. Talk to folks. Try to get there early if you're trying to get the used stuff so the good stuff doesn't go away. Is pretty much that's what everybody does. As soon as the gates open, everybody's flocking over to the flea market tables trying to pick up all the bargains. It's a feeding frenzy. You'll end up with scraps and skiblins left by the end of it, but not much. So you definitely want to show up early, and unless you're planning on just buying new stuff. And all the vendors that show up with the new equipment are going to have plenty of stock. So there's no hurry on that. And, sometimes you get some pretty good deals on that as well. Not all the equipment is ridiculously expensive. If you want to get good equipment online, I recommend randl.com. That's R&L Electronics. I've got some equipment from them, so have some other buddies of mine, and have been treated very well by those folks. They're top-notch, and they got some pretty decent prices. That's where I picked up my Yaesu VX7R handy talkie, which is basically a quad-band radio. It's got 6 meters, 2 meters, 1.25, and 70 centimeters in there, all in the same rig. It's submersible and very durable. I wouldn't recommend, throwing it in the water, but, should you get it wet, as long as you're using all the stock parts with it, you really don't have that much to worry about. I generally end up abusing radios, not on purpose, but, stuff gets dropped, knocked, slammed into stuff, knocked off of stuff. And this thing has taken a lot of abuse and shows no signs of the wear for it. It's a rugged little radio, and I'm very impressed with its operation. It's also got wideband receive on it, which you can pick up basically all the way through AM, all the way through shortwave, CB, everything, pretty much every frequency all the way up to gigahertz. Sort of the little Nazi block they stick on the old analog cell phones, frequencies, which nobody uses anymore, so I don't know why they even bother. And with a little bit of software modification, that radio can pretty much talk to just about anything it can hear, except for the low bands, the shortwave, and the AM and whatnot.
Yeah, these are viable options that we can do now. You can get the licensing and everything that you need for $20, and then you could go get a radio and everything that you need. Swap meet. You can cannibalize things. You could do what you have to and still do this stuff on a budget. And what it comes down to is prioritizing. Prioritizing where your money goes and things that will help you in the long run, and organizing yourselves amongst the different states. That's going to be a big thing that we will need should something bad happen, and that's what we're about, to be quite honest. That's
absolutely
what militia's for.
And also being in touch with your local ham community gets you in touch with your local people and your local emergency responders and what's going on in your area a lot more so than you're going to get off any media feed at all, because you generally have somebody on the ground that can tell you, eyewitness exactly what's happening, or has been involved in it or has got firsthand information. The ham radio community is usually pretty connected to things that are going on in the local community. And with it being our desire to strengthen our communities, to build communities of safety, to, reestablish our civil authority from the community up, it's a very good move, to have these ties, to folks like that. Even if they're not interested in militia, they're interested in communications. And that's something that can be an asset in any emergency situation, or just informational resources in a day-to-day average situation. I've found the aggregate of the amateur radio community to be quite a helpful bunch of folk.
Yeah. Now here's another point that I've wanted to say on here. What my plan is to get a ham radio license and set something up for the group. Set up a base station where warning alerts or things like that can be sent out. But first, I'm not going to lie, I'm going to get a receive only that you can get at Radio Shack or even at a swap meet or anything like this. It's just a receive only, so that you can receive warning orders, warnings, anything. And this is a note to the officers and commanders who might be listening. Setting up a ham radio base and having squad or team leaders, however you denominate yourselves or whatever you'd like to say, get receive onlys. And you communicate to them when something is happening, and then they will communicate to their squad. It's a very viable option. Once again, it's cost effective. Get one ham radio for command staff, and have a bunch of receive onlys on that same frequency. So when something happens, all the people who need to know will know, and that information can get passed on.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good idea. You get a lot of different kind of scanners that not only can pick that up, but can pick a wide variety of other things up, so you can listen in on fire, EMS, local law enforcement, weather, and any number of other things. Something else I'll throw out there, though, and this is not an excuse to not get your ham radio license, but by the rules, in an emergency, when lives hang in the balance, anything goes. You can transmit anywhere, anything, with or without a license. It doesn't matter if it is for the purpose of trying to save lives. So, just remember that. But again, don't use that as an excuse not to get your license, because, that doesn't just make you legal. It also makes you part of the camaraderie and the group that is amateur radio. And believe me, they're not going to respect people that are pirating on there. If you're not legitimate and follow the same tests and rules they do, which really aren't that strict, actually, they're not going to respect you. But, if you play the same game and you're one of them, they're going to treat you like a brother, and will be overwhelmingly helpful in all sorts of situations.
Exactly. That was the next point I was going to come up with, and Randy had just put this in the chat room. Not everyone will be in a militia or a committee, but will be willing to help in ways they feel comfortable and capable. If you get on the radio and somebody that you've been communicating with, because he's in your ham group, doesn't openly partake in any kind of resistance, says, you got a shipment of cigars coming your way, buddy, then you should know. This is something I touched on lightly in my show last week. You don't need to be out there running ops and being part of a special operations team and all these other things to participate in resistance to anything that the militia is preparing for. You establish a community amongst other ham operators, and you make friends in the right places. These people who are in your groups, your clubs, they will be useful. I'm sure everybody, obviously not everybody, I'm sure there's plenty of like-minded folk in these ham clubs. It seems to be a very self-sufficient way of a person to be. It proves that there's self-sufficiency there, and that goes a long way. And not a long way. It shows what kind of person. When you have your ham radio and you're establishing that community. Now,
on the average, ham radio licensees are usually pretty prepared individuals. What we know about disasters and disaster communication, backup power, and what it takes to survive these disasters. Most of us actually been trained for this stuff. So you're going to find a well above average in preparedness, across the entire scope of the group. Whether it's people that are willing to actually help you with the resistance, or just be an asset for when you need communications or technical help or anything else. We're all in this together, whether we like it or not, and everybody's got something to contribute, whether or not it's direct or indirect.
Right, and that's really what makes the militia community dynamic. Is we have everybody. We are everybody. I know states like the People's Republic of Illinois, state constitution and state law reads, if you are of fighting age, which is basically 17 to 65, give or take a few years, don't quote me on it, obviously, and it's usually uniform throughout the country, but if you are of that fighting age, you are militia. You don't have a choice. Whether or not you regulate yourself properly, that's on you. It's actually one of the flyers that I've seen for a group. It said, don't want to join a militia? Guess what? You're already in one.
Yeah, you already are militia. And that is the truth. And I wish more people would be willing to step up and embrace that. At least for, periods of time. It'd be more like it is in Switzerland. Everybody in Switzerland serves for some period of time. Everybody's trained. Everybody's armed. There's caches of weapons everywhere for anybody to get to. Trying to invade Switzerland would be a fool's errand. I don't care how big your force is. You're going to get slaughtered. They're too defensible. They're too well armed. And there's too much unity in their community. You wouldn't want to do it. It's a bad errand, and it would be better if we could get like that too, where when these people thought about taking us on, they would think of the same thing. That, well, this is a fool's errand. We can't do this. We can't take them on. We can't possibly win. If we had all of the registered hunters in the United States, as part of a militia, good grief, we'd have the largest standing army on the planet. By several orders of magnitude. Nobody would want to ever tangle with us.
Right, and I do believe that other countries around the world do see that as a problem. As the Japanese general during World War II, I would never invade the United States. There'd be a rifle behind every blade of grass. And to be quite honest, that is still true to this day. And
oh, absolutely it is. We've seen record gun sales, record ammunition sales. That stuff hasn't backed off at all. And the small, tiny amount of guns that have been confiscated illegally, mind you, in no way balance that back out. We're better armed now than ever before. And, with things getting rougher and rougher and the outlook looking so bleak, even people that aren't completely in the know, that just know, hey, wait a minute, something bad's about to happen. Let's stock up on guns and ammo. That's their first instinct. So here we have it. We've got a lot of guns. We've got a lot of people. Now, we need to get those people trained where they can use those guns effectively. And that's one of the great things that we can do with our militia is we can actually, get good training to people because I'd like to see everybody trained. I can't necessarily mandate that. But we would certainly be better off. We'd have a lot fewer accidents, if people actually were trained properly in the use of and handling of their firearms.
Now that was actually, I read this a while ago in, if I'm not mistaken, it was Alexander Hamilton in the Federalist Papers. Don't quote me if it was him. It could have been, John Jay. Either way. They said training everybody for combat, having everybody being soldiers is basically an unreasonable task. And I'm not trying to be a jerk here. I'm not trying to be rude to you. I'm just...
it is an unreasonable task. It can never happen.
Right. That's...
Yeah, and I'm not necessarily saying, train for combat, but, basic, gun safety, this is one thing. And that's something that is feasible that, you could train everybody for, handling their stuff properly.
Right. He did go on to say that, and he went on to say things that I say pretty regularly is there's a use for everybody. You don't have to just be a 11 Bravo frontline mobile infantry. You can be the truck driver, the radio operator, the resupply, the medic. You can do anything. That's what makes militias so dynamic. And really a formidable enemy if anybody decided to get froggy. Now, he went on to say exactly what you said, be well versed in the use of firearms and powder. Firearm safety training, big thing. Big few things. Finger off the trigger. Safety's always broken. Don't point it at anything. Always be sure you're backstopped. Those basic things that need to be drilled into people's brains. I wasn't allowed to even have a BB gun until I memorized those 4 rules. This is something that, whether you're armed or not, you need to know these things because at some point you're probably going to have to pick one up.
Yep, at some point. And in that particular situation, it's probably going to be in the heat of the moment under pressure. It's not going to be just, oh, let's pick this up and go play with it. No, it's not going to be like that. It's going to be, I have to pick this up because my life depends on it.
Right. Yeah. I think we're getting a little bit into the weeds here, but that's all right. That's all right. Still good stuff.
Oh yeah, no, it's all useful. So you know, is it really in the weeds? No, not really. It all applies to the things that we're trying to educate folks on. You know, so hey, it's all good. Doesn't really matter where we go as long as it's useful information. If we start talking about things like, you know, space aliens, reptoids, 2012, Mayan calendar, you know, all of that stuff, you know, that's down in the weeds.
We're talking about that next week, so be sure to tune in. Definitely kidding about that, by the way.
Oh, yes, definitely so.
You know, just kind of moving on, with every rifle or firearm that you have, you should, in your gear or your pack, have spare parts, your spare bolt assembly, spare firing pin, all those things that are prone to breakage. For those who are, like myself, I'm not going to lie, so you're kind of giving me a course on this too. What kind of things are going to be necessary, backup parts and things like that, to keep on hand at that little base, the little command base that you have with your ham radio broadcasting?
Backup power is probably number one thing. Be able to operate the equipment off the grid. You know, should the mains commercial power fail, you've got to be able to continue operations. You know, so having things able to operate on battery is quite essential. Depending on what kind of station you're trying to put together, really depends on the kind of gear you're going to need to adequately take advantage of things. You know, if you are doing HF, you know, for long range communications, you know, point to point, you're going to want, you know, a little bit more in the lines of antennas. An antenna tuner is an absolute must. Most of the newer radios have those built in. But the older ones you might pick up at the swap meet do not. What an antenna tuner will do for you is make the impedance balance for the transmitter to be able to transmit pretty much to any piece of wire out there, regardless of shape or length, which is beautiful. When you've got a whole bunch of different bands you're going to operate from say 80 meters all the way up to 10 meters, that's a lot of different kinds of antennas that you might need. Either that or an antenna tuner can get you around that requirement, at least to keep the transmitter safe from burning up, because it's something you will learn through the course of taking the tests about impedance matches and what's called standing wave ratio. If you don't have a good match, you're reflecting most of your power back into the final transistor in your transmitter, and you'll just burn it up, and you won't have a good day at that point. So a little bit of training, with the test is probably a good thing. That way you actually learn, how these radios work, the theory and operation behind them, and it applies to all different kinds of, radio equipment. It's not just amateur radio stuff. The technology is the same across the board when you're dealing with RF and waves and wavelengths and, antennas, types and sizes, things like that. Good lightning arresters on your tower, probably, good thing if you've got stuff up in the tower. It really depends on what kind of station you're trying to put together. If all you're doing is local communications and utilizing already established repeaters, then you basically could get away with a bunch of handheld radios and some mobile radios to put in your vehicles. With a halfway decent antenna on those, you'd be surprised how far you can actually get. The repeaters will extend the range, and there's a lot of areas where they got a bunch of repeaters linked together. For example, in California on 1.25 meter, that's 220 megahertz, there's something called the Condor system, which is a group of repeaters that are linked all the way up the coast and into Nevada, where you can get on that and the entire state can hear you at the same time. Which is a pretty nifty thing. And a lot of other regions have similar kinds of things, whether they're always in place like Condor is, or only come up during emergencies. Where we're at, we have similar stuff, but it's mostly only active during events and emergencies, where we have, widespread linkage. But we've got, a couple of repeaters that are permanently linked together here that give us a remarkable amount of range. We can go all the way into Oklahoma, all the way down into Texas, and, cover, quite well in the central and southwest part of the state in a very solid fashion. And you don't have to have, big antennas or anything to get into that most anywhere. Maybe when you start to get on the fringes, you do, but we got widespread coverage, especially out to the west of here, because that's where all the weather comes in from. And that's one of the things we do is we spot and report from National Weather Service where their eyes out in the field. We always know what's going on ahead of them. So in any area that's prone to severe weather, if you really want to know, what the real scoop is, what's going on, tune into your Skywarn net, on one of the local amateur radio repeaters, and you're going to know more about what's going on than what they're telling you on TV and what the actual National Weather Service broadcasts are. Right.
That all goes back to a modern committee of safety, basically. Being able to get the alarm band out before the bullshit news. Excuse me, I try not to swear on my show. Before the mainstream media, the news gets a hold of it and twists it, you will hear things. You will understand what's going on. That shipment of cigars is headed your way will, come to you before anything else. Before I don't know. I'm not sure what I'm trying to say here. It will be an effective warning system, and it's viable, and it's a cost-effective solution right now. There's one more thing I wanted to talk to you about ham radio specifically, and that's the basic setup for a beginner. I'm actually taking notes right now because I'm looking into doing this myself, but for all the listeners as well, what kind of things are you going to need to get a hold of before you can start broadcasting and talking on there? And you have your license, now what?
What I would recommend is starting with 2 meters. That's VHF. That's 144 to 148 megahertz. That's very close to the VHF public service bands, and is the most popular amateur radio band out there. You will have repeaters all over your area pretty much no matter where you are, even if you're out in the sticks. You're going to have something that you can talk to from just a handheld radio. And you start with your handheld radio, which you should have anyway, and start, making contacts, talking to your fellow hams, attending meetings, getting to know folks and, share information and stories with them. They're more than happy to tutor people. It's called being an Elmer. That's kind of an amateur radio term. And there's a lot of folks out there that are, perfectly willing to be your Elmer and teach you as much as you want to know, because they've been doing it a long time and they love it. It's a fun and interesting hobby, just for the sake of having a hobby. That's why I originally got into it, but I've stuck around in it more for the community aspect of it.
Yeah, and that's good. I've been saying that since my first show.
There's also something called Echo Link, which you can get for your computer, whether you have a Windows computer or a Mac or Linux or even an iPhone. They have Echo Link for iPhone, and what Echo Link does is it is a system to allow you to use the internet to connect to all sorts of repeaters all over the world. So you could actually, once you get your call sign, get on the air without even having a radio, just having this piece of software on your computer. So you could go out and start making contacts all over the world just from your computer. Echolink's kind of a nifty thing for that. And there's also something called IRLP, which is more over the air, which you'd have to have your handy-talkie radio to take advantage of it. But if your repeater is IRLP enabled, you just dial in a code and it'll link it to any other repeater that's IRLP enabled anywhere in the world. And we do neat stuff like that using the internet. Now, relying on these things during disasters is probably not going to happen, because there's a good chance that the internet communication lines will be down or mostly impassable. So we also can fall back on just point-to-point RF linking, one repeater to another, to another, to another, and also relaying traffic, where you can get your information that you need to send to somebody in the hands of somebody with a good HF setup. They can say, talk from Virginia all the way over to, Oregon and get a message to your people in Oregon, and vice versa. There's a lot of options.
Yeah, I mean, that, once again, I know I keep saying it's viable. You get this $15, $20 license, get your call sign and get your tests all done and everything, and you can go on the internet and do it, and save up slowly, or do what you need to do to get yourself that radio, or even just get a receive only. Like I said, it's a very viable option for getting information before anybody else does.
Absolutely. You can get scanners at pawn shops. You're not
Right.
likely to find too much actual ham radio gear at a pawn shop, but scanners, which are effective receivers that can receive, most any of the local frequencies anyway, can be had for a dime a dozen pretty much at a good pawn shop.
Okay.
We've got Field Day coming up in the last weekend of June. And what that's going to be is every year, nationwide, worldwide, we get together and publicly exhibit our radios and our communications and pretty much have an open house. So if you were to get a hold of your ham club, find out where their Field Day meet is going to be, you can actually go out and have them show you the radios and how they work. And they always like visitors. We love having visitors at our Field Day events. So don't be shy. Come on down and see us.
Yeah, that's great. That's the community that we need. It's on a smaller scale, but that's not to put it down at all. But that is creating community, and that's a good start. I would like to move into gear, unless there's anything else on ham or any kind of comms that you'd like to throw in there, Dave.
Well, like I said, the ham's valuable because it's going to give you a base understanding of radio above all else, and that applies to any other kind of radio technology you're ever going to lay your hands on. Whether it's GMRS, trunk systems, the RF theories are the same. It's the same kind of technology. And there really is no substitute for the linkage into the community that you can get, from amateur radio, because we're all, very much community oriented and do all sorts of events all over the place to serve the community. Special events, charity races, emergency drills, you name it. We're always all over it. And if you really want to get to know the people that are talking and communicating, and part of emergency response and first responders that are plugged in and aware, it's a really good way to do it.
I know some state police or highway patrol or things like that, they monitor channel 9 on the CB. Is there anything like that on ham radio?
There's the national calling frequency for 2 meters is 146.520 megahertz, and I don't know whether or not they really monitor that or not. Generally when there's an emergency, you can get a hold of another ham, and another ham will, patch you through to 911 or any other emergency services that you might need. It may be moot. I don't know whether or not they monitor or not. I'm pretty sure everything's monitored from somewhere or another. You know how that ends up going in this day and age.
Oh, right. Monitoring for calls in distress and things like that.
No, not so much. But like I said, on all of our repeaters, we always kind of keep an eye out, and if somebody ever comes on with an emergency, we're always going to step up and try to help them out. pretty much under any circumstances at all. You're always going to find somebody, that's, willing to help during an emergency, even if they're not, too keen on just, talking to you for giggles and grins and all of that. They're going to step up and help you out. I've had a lot of good luck with that, and it's a lot safer kind of community than trying to rely on Channel 9 on the CB. The CB is a point-to-point. There's no repeaters. The audio quality is terrible. People jam the hell out of each other. You're legally limited to 10 watts, but of course nobody obeys that law and will stick these ridiculous linear amplifiers on there, and we call it either chicken band or children's band. It's really gone the way of the toilet, over the last few decades, and the quality overall on all aspects is so much better on amateur radio, and you've got a much farther range when you can factor repeaters into the mix. You can easily talk 100 miles, whereas getting 5 or 6 miles on CB might be challenging.
Right. I know I had said that Amelia was going to come on tonight. She might be on later. Kind of a little bit of mix-up or miscommunication. But for the rest of the show, I have Major Cross on, and we will be talking about gear, certain gear that should be standardized or anything like that, and preparations. Setting things up now while we have time. I know there's talk of this month bad things are happening and all this stuff, but we need to use every second to our advantage. So thanks for coming on, Major. How's everything going over there?
It's going pretty good. Everybody hear me pretty good?
Hey. Yeah, absolutely. Coming in loud and clear. It's great to hear from you again. I hope things are going well up in Ohio. I'm going to kind of sit down here in the producer's chair and listen for a while. I may chime back in a time or two, but I know Fox is in great hands with you with your experience. There's not a whole lot I can add that you can't. So y'all have a good one. I'm going to sit here and listen.
All right. Thanks, Dave. Don't hesitate, though. If something does come up, feel free. Once again, Major, it's really glad to have you on. I always love having you on the show. So thank you for coming on. I had touched on this a little bit last week, and I would like to get into it a little deeper now. With my personal setup, I have found a good balance after a while of working on different things. I have a good balance of Molly and Alice gear. I have an Alice pack, the medium Alice pack. My vest is Molly, but I have the Alice belt with clips, and everything that I could need is on me at that time. I see these militia units running around in nothing but a plate carrier and 5 or 6 mags for their primary rifle, and maybe a pistol on their battle belt. But we're not going to be able at first to go back to base, refit, and rearm when something bad happens. It's just not going to happen. And later on, we will talk about setting up cache points and bivouacs and things like that. But for now, I'd like to speak with you, Major, a little bit on on gear. My setup in most cases wouldn't work for you personally. Doing a double feed malfunction drill. You putting my vest on might get snagged on something that you're not used to. And when you have your gear, you need to train consistently and do the same thing. Don't change up how you grip the mag. Don't change up what you do with the pistol mags, or just be consistent in everything and make sure that there's no excessive waste movement. So you're not wasting even a fraction of a second, because a fraction of a second in a firefight could be life or death.
Correct.
So, with that being said, what kind of things should or should not be standardized? Can you really tell your unit to standardize Molly or standardize Alice and still be an effective force?
Yeah, to a point. I'm not really into the vests. More of the special forces type gear. You don't see them wearing a lot of bulletproof vests because it's just a lot of additional weight that won't benefit most of the people. Just because they're, it's by the time they get their gear, their ammo, and everything on, it's just too heavy for them because they don't go through the basic training of having that stuff on all the time and running. But some of the most basic gear, as Sergeant Gulo just said, the e-tool. So many people they don't even consider the shovel. I mean, that's not just used as a utility tool; it's also a weapon. And they have to realize, I mean, there may be a time where they don't have any ammo, and of course, close quarter fighting, that's a very important thing. They got to have something. Some of the biggest problems I see with new recruits come in, they start buying all the high dollar stuff. The bulletproof vests, all this Alice gear and stuff, it takes some weeks, figure out how to use it and arrange it. Me, it's the LBE gear. It's the LBE, your ammo packs, your canteens, your e-tool, a butt pack, and a 3-day assault pack. Because basically that's your field gear. And when you're in a firefight, you don't want to have that 70-pound pack on the back of your back, along with the rest of your stuff. You're going to look like a turtle, and you're going to basically be taken out pretty quick. The biggest thing is they've got to remember that you carry the essentials of what you want to do, what you want to use. You're going to have very minimum things. Yeah, it's important to have ways of starting fires. But, to have 10 different ways of starting fire in your pack is ridiculous. There's a lot of different things you can do, but, it's simplicity, efficiency, and practicality. It's like your weapons. You don't want to have a lot of lipstick on your weapons. You want to have it as plain as possible. Train with it with your iron sights, not with the high-powered scopes and stuff like that, unless you've already done the training and are able to do the sniper stuff. And a lot of people, they come into it right off the bat, I want to be a sniper. Well, I'm going to tell you, if you haven't passed the basics yet, you're never going to make it as a sniper. Hunting deer is not the same as hunting a man, because deer can't fight back. Man will. And they can hunt you back. So there's a lot of things that you got a lot of essentials to use on your stuff. But, it's, God, I mean, just basic. We have the basic list in our handbooks that I would rather see people get first besides buying that $150 backpack, because that $150 could have used to buy all their basic gear. And they would be set. I mean, unsupported for as long as they needed to be. The only thing you got to do is worrying about getting your food and stuff like that, but you can get that on the trail. Learn the basics. Learn, what's edible in your areas. What isn't edible, number one. Starting a fire, they teach that basics in Boy Scouts. A lot of guys use their hand to do the friction, in which that can be dangerous. Learn how to make a damn bow. And use it. I mean, you can use your shoestring, you can use your 550 cord, you can use a lot of different things. But it's making it without the least discomfort to you, because if you screw up your hands, you're screwed. Out there in the wilderness, you can get infection real quick, and if you can't grip something, you can't grip that gun to fire it either. So it's stay to the basics. Don't worry about that GPS thing. Learn how to use a compass and a knife, and learn how to use the things that, get the Boy Scout handbook from years ago and learn how all those basics in surviving in the wildlife. But you got to realize it's like a lot of people watch David Cannonberry. Very, very intelligent man. But he is showing you things on how to survive to be found. You need to learn how to survive, to hide. This is militia. We're not sitting there trying to survive to be found. So there's that's two different things. Some things you may be doing without a big fire, or you're going to have to hide your fire and reduce the glare from the fire. You got to learn things like that. But your gear, you got your canteens, your knife, your rifle, your ammo, your butt pack, your LBE gear. Put your 550 cord on it. Have some rope, and have some of the basics in your backpack, and a change of clothes, because if you get wet, you're going to need to be able to get out of those wet clothes and put some dry ones on while you're drying those. But that is the essential things. Always go for the basics first, because it's that big $125 Alice pack ain't going to save your ass.
Right.
But that tool will.
Yeah, there's three things that I've always found priority in, and that nobody really, until recently, until I started hearing more people talking about it, but three things that I've seen that are really not paid much attention to, and that's the gas mask, 550 cord, and the Boy Scout handbook. Just like you said, learn the basics. Learn what's edible. Learn how to make a fire, how to make a bow. The 550 cord you can use for anything. Just don't cut it down. You don't ever cut it down. And the gas mask, obviously. I don't think we need to talk about why we'll need that. The gas mask will protect you for however long the filter is, but it's not an excuse to stay inside a contamination zone, because a gas mask will not protect you from gamma radiation.
Well, one of the biggest things with the gas mask is make sure you find one that you can change your filters out without contaminating yourself. Some of them, you can't change that filter while you're still in a gas-filled area, because you'll suck in that gas. Some of them are made to be changed out without, breathing in the contaminated air. But gas masks are probably, of the basic gear, is one of the last ones that I suggest they get, because they, when it comes to that, they're using biological and chemical weapons. Biological, maybe they'll protect you. Majority of them. The chemical weapons, if it gets on your skin, unless you've got the whole biosuit and chem suit, that mask ain't going to do nothing but prolong your agony. I want somebody to get a dependable weapon, get dependable gear. This is going to be a hit and run, hit and run, hit and run. It's not going to be stand and fight, because we are outnumbered on their side as far as tech and resources. We have to grab their resources. Don't let them dig in. Take them right away. And everybody's thinking, well, we'll be able to hold them off. Well, you're not going to be holding them off. You're going to be like a mosquito, and you're going to irritate the hell out of them, because the more you irritate them, the less it's going to destroy their morale. So that's the thing. I mean, this isn't going to be a war we're going to have front lines fighting all the time. There may be situations where we're holding them off at certain areas, but it's going to be a lot of teams going around and trying to take their supplies away from them, making it hard for them to even dig in. But once they're dug in with their resources, their air superiority, stuff like that, I mean, that's an if. I don't see our military helping them 100%. I think this is going to be a civil war within our military, because I think a lot of these men and women are going to be saying, "Oh, you're not going to do that to our families," regardless of where they are, and they're going to be fighting that off. Now, as far as foreign troops, their leaders may have a vested interest, but they don't. So the more you can make it hard for them to even be there, the less they're going to want to be there.
Exactly. The whole point to guerrilla or asymmetrical warfare is to, at least to me, is to make them shake in their boots every time that they go outside the green zone.
Exactly.
Destroy their morale. Now, I'm going to take a step back here, if you don't mind. When I had mentioned plate carriers, there was some talk in the chat room about it. Heavy infantry will have its place. Not right away. Like you had just said, once they get dug in and they have their resources available to them, we won't stand a chance. But
we won't stand a chance. But they're going to have to be resupplied. No matter where they're dug in, they're going to have a resupply. So we need to eliminate their ability to resupply their people.
Right.
That's be the biggest advantage to us, is eliminating their resupply. But our equipment, if we can go back to that, our equipment is going to be the most important thing. We're going to have things that are reliable. And I know a lot of people are getting, in Sergeant, they're getting SKSs, they're getting the AK-47s. The AK-47s, yeah, they throw a lot of lead, but they're not very accurate. We need weapons that are accurate and reliable. And I don't think, it's just like 11th Cav said, they don't believe they'll resort to gas. I don't think so either. They don't want to destroy this land. They want to occupy it. And if they use chemical and biological weapons, unless it's going to be cleared out very easy, over a certain point in time, they're not going to want to use them. Dirty nukes maybe in certain cities, but, they're going to preserve our countryside. And that's where most of us are going to be. Because I don't know of anybody that's going to hold off a city. Too many resources are going to be needed. Too many people are going to be able to have that three-dimensional environment.
Right. I mean, at first, it is going to have to be guerrilla warfare. Hit and run, scavenge what you need, things like that, until we have our occupied territories and our resources where we can have warehouses and manufacturing and things like that. That's down the road. What we need to think about first is our first step into that. And as the militia, our first step of resisting any kind of occupation. That's our job. I don't care how you might, not you specifically, Major, I don't care how you might construe or try and twist my words. That's what the militia is for. We are here to defend this country, to defend our people, by the use of arms. Plain and simple, there's no arguing that. I don't care what enemy is here to destroy the people, destroy our freedom, destroy our Constitution, or destroy our land. We are here to stand against that. So you can construe that any way you want. Everything I say is covered under freedom of speech.
Because, we're going to be in defense up to that point of when they declare war. And
exactly.
Then we're going to declare war. And I'm not going to stop at a state boundary. I'm not going to stop at a country boundary. I'm going to drive those lemons all the way to the sea until every one of them thinking commies die and drown. That's just that's the only way we can look at it. Because if we let them reorganize and regroup and then come at us again, we're going to lose a lot of people.
Exactly. Watch out for the retreat, because 9 times out of 10, they're regrouping. Now, Mark Kornke is somebody I listen to. He said in one of his broadcasts, kick the slats off of the bad guys and then go to the other states and help them kick the slats off of the other guys.
Right.
You can't just stop at the border, the imaginary line of your state, because they'll siege you, and they have the resources to do that.
Yeah, that's where the unity thing is a very important thing, because we will have to communicate, because if I'm driving up through Michigan and I get them all the way to the Michigan border, Michigan better be ready because we're coming through with them and pushing them all the way back and keep going. So they better be ready for it because I'm not stopping because they don't like it, the fact I'm going to cross that border. It's our country that I'm fighting for at that point, not just my state. And that's where we all have to understand there has to be a communication between all of us. But people are going to grab gear and find gear all over the place. If you drop the guy in front of you, don't worry about him being booby trapped. Grab his, strip him clean. If one of your comrades drops, strip his body clean. It may sound cold, but he can't use it anymore. You can.
Yeah, that's got to be done.
Yes.
That was a big part of the first part of the show. I don't think I said it as much as I should have, but getting your ham radio command posts, or however you want to say it. Don't just get in command with your group or your unit or your state. Get into contact with other units that have ham radios. I know CCOM, if I'm not mistaken, is doing something similar, is getting everybody not under the same unit, but getting everybody in contact with each other. Basically getting everybody on the same page, and that's something that needs to be done, because like you said, we're going to be crossing the borders. We are going to kick them back to where they came from. Or sending nothing back, but a rumor.
Yeah, I'm not going to worry about kicking them back where they came from. I'm going to eliminate the threat.
Right.
Because if they're going to mess with the American people, they're going to regret it. And that can be anybody. That can be foreign or domestic. I'm not putting my life on the line to let this person go back home and then come back and hit me later.
Right.
And as far as infiltration goes, we're going to have that regardless. They have it in our military. They had it during World War II. They had it, just every war they had people, double agents, whatever, on both sides. It's going to happen. You just have to be as standardized as possible, but have your intelligence done correctly by the people that already know what they're doing. And that's where our military is a very, very important part of this, because these guys have trained in this. They've used it. They've been fighting the longest war of our history so far. These guys are valuable, very valuable. Anytime they have something to say, you should shut up and listen. That's my opinion as far as a lot of these other people that go hunting for weekends and think they know what it's like. They don't know shit compared to these guys. And there's going to be a lot of people that's been talking, real big and everything else, and then as soon as the bullets start flying, they're going to drop their gun and start running. There's people I have heard say, yeah, we saw that during the paintball gun war. They do it during paintball. You think they're going to hold that gun and fight on that line if there's bullets flying? But, your gear, you gotta remember, keep it light, keep it simple. The lighter, the better. Now, you're gonna have your big packs from when you're going from one location to another and you're not under fire. Yes. But that stuff, you should learn how to use your basic and be able to survive unsupported, and definitely just on your basic LBE gear. And if you get the right tools in your gear, like your E-tool, your knife, your 550 cord, stuff like that, you're going to be fine. You just got to know the basic techniques on what you need to do with that and how to use it. It's not going to cost you thousands and thousands of dollars to equip yourself. For $200, you can have all your basic gear minus your weapons.
Right, and then when it comes to food and stuff, this is the next part of the show I want to get into for the last 35 minutes, or probably more. Caches, and setting those up now and preparing now will really help in lightening up the load. If you have several caches, stashes, I like to call them, set up around your AO, you eliminate the need for carrying 80, 90 pounds of gear, including food and ammo. Like you said, we're not going to be standing up and fighting toe-to-toe. You need to be mobile. And if your rally point is point A, you egress to rally point B, which is a friendly house with food, ammo, and water. And you stand up and you make a fight, and then you break off. You break contact and you get the heck out of Dodge. Then you go to rally point C, which has more ammo and gas mask filters or whatever. You need to set these up, and you need to have your community strong, because an effective force is one that doesn't have to count on a resupply, because the people in the neighborhood will walk out to you and hand you what you need.
Yeah, I mean, you should know your AO and not just have one rally point, but more than one.
Right.
And as far as your caches go, I mean, that's just a piece of PVC pipe with 2 caps on it. Bury it, but make sure you paint it black. You know, or a camo green or something, because if it rains and it unburies parts of it, it's less chance of it being seen. But if it's white, it'll stand out. It'll stand out. It really will.
Right.
But those things, I mean, put extra ammo, food, maybe additional supplies. Like if you got extra water, put them in there. A couple more canteens. Canteens are cheap. You can fill them up, put them in there. But you use a lot of staples when you store your food. That way you can make a lot more food, like rice, for instance. Rice can be added with a rabbit you catch to make that last or go farther among the people around you. It'll fill them up, plus it'll give them some proteins. And it's a very essential that the people don't lose the energy that they have, they can continue. But the caches, you should have them spread throughout, and have the different guys in your units put some in there. That way they know it's there, you know it's there, and within your company or unit, you know where all the caches are. And just, tell the command structure, because unless your command structure is totally gone, I mean, someone's going to have access to extra food, extra ammo, things like that. But ammo is very important to put into a cache. Very important.
Right, and it goes to say, it goes to show why you shouldn't put all your eggs in one basket, if you will. You have one cache point in the middle of a field somewhere. Well, a couple days later, that field is now a forward operating base for blue helmets. Guess what? You're SOL.
Right.
Go
deep in the woods, put it into a bank that's well hidden, so when you're there to get it out, you're not being seen digging it out.
Right.
Make sure put one end always towards the top, lengthwise in. The bigger the PVC, the deeper, you don't have to dig a real deep hole, but just have it to where you can get to the one end real quickly, so you only have to dig that out, not the whole thing. Because you can reuse it. You may want to stash more stuff in there, close it back up, dig it, and then hide it. Put leaves over it so it doesn't look, but you got to know how to do that no trace camping type thing. You got to make sure that they don't see the fresh dirt that you dug up. So you got to be real careful when you're digging it up and going back to get it later. Be able to hide where that was freshly dug. It's technique, and it's knowledge of knowing what to do when you're doing it. And a lot of this stuff is covered in the big handbooks. the Boy Scouts and stuff like that, the Rangers, they have the books for it. Like Midwest Resistance put up their water purifier. That's one thing that's very, very important. Got to be able to purify water. That way, if before you get to a cache to replenish it, you can get it from a stream, a ditch, or whatever. That's the thing. Water purification I didn't mention. That's really good. Med supplies, yes.
With water purifiers, though, I think everybody who doesn't know this already, some of them, or most of them, you need filters after every 50 uses or whatever. It varies on how much you pay for it. You need those extra filters. You can't just get one water purifier and that lasts you forever. There are filters that go into that. And to be a little easier on that filter and make it last longer than the 50 gallons that it promises, take all the dirt and gunk out, run it through your shirt or a towel or something and then put it through the purifier. These are things that's going to help you out in the long run. You're going to have those water purifiers longer. You're going to be able to get more out of them. And with using the PVC pipe and 2 end caps, you can go down to lumber big box store down the street and get 3-foot PVC pipe and 2 caps. You're spending $10.
Yeah.
This is another extremely cost-effective and very viable option to stashing ammo, food, water purifiers, medical supplies. I saw on Amazon field surgical kit with suture, not everything obviously, but a very well put together med kit and surgical kit for $40. This is stuff, and I keep on saying this, but it needs to be said. You need to prioritize where you put your money.
Yes, very much.
And it's small, simple things. $10, $30, $40. You end up spending about $100, and you have a full cache, food, water, ammo, a surgical kit, and a water purifier with filters.
Yes.
And that will last you, your family, or your fire team for 2 or 3 days. Now imagine if you're in a statewide group such as yours, Major, if everybody put $100 into a cache and created that cache point or rally point or whatever. That is exactly, like was mentioned earlier, exactly what the Swiss are doing. The hills are alive with militia if something bad were to happen.
Right.
And they have tunnels and weapons caches and everything else that they could possibly need. They can send anybody out of there on a pole. It doesn't matter who you are. If they have their stuff together.
Now, Sergeant Gulo put on there, satellites can see disturbed dirt. Yeah, there's one problem with that. Yes, it can do that, but they're going to see every hole that an animal digs. They're going to see, and that's the reason why I said put it in the side of a hill, because it's less. I'm looking a little more like an animal is digging a hole. But if you're just out there, just the dirt a little bit, and they're going to see the same thing from the top, and they're going to look there instead of at your cache. There's a lot of ways to disguise it, like Midwest, that strain debris. There is ways. That's not a foolproof way of finding out where that stuff is. But yeah, I mean, you if you had $100 into a cache, if everybody did that, I mean, you've got a lot of stuff in that area. And if you do 2 or 3 caches in your area, far away from each other, actually, surround your AO, you're going to be fine. You're going to have what you need when you need it, as long as you can get to it. But don't put it out in the open. Put it inside of a hill. Put it inside the woods. everybody's got wood somewhere, except if you're in a city, which that's easy enough to hide caches if you're stuck there. Go to abandoned buildings and just, hide it very well. But, buy in bulk and save. Yeah, and even if everybody did it, you can, like I said, you would have a lot of material.
Now, Midwest Resistance mentioned medical supply stores. Let's see, a big box of bandages for $8.
Yeah.
This goes back to, once again, I know I'm trying to drill it into your brains, prioritizing your money, because we are all on a budget right now. We're all getting raped with the gas prices and the taxes, you name it.
Well, you have a lot of people that are unemployed too, so I mean their money's even tighter.
Right. Everybody's tight right now, but there are ways to do this. Like I said, you spend $100 and you have yourself a week, 5 or 6 days tops if you do it right. PVC pipe with everything that you need. Rice and beans, rice and pintos, you don't need water to eat that.
He mentioned...
You don't need heat. I'm sorry about that. You don't need to heat it up. You just need water.
Yep.
So that was my mistake there.
You put in there 3 days of food. Yeah, that's good too, but you also want to realize that if you're in an area and you're in the country and you've got wild game around, learn how to trap, use it. Because that 3 days of food, if you picked up 6 extra people on your travels through, you may not have 3 days worth of food. You may have an hour's worth of food. That if you put 3 days of food for 5 people in that PVC pipe, you're going to be digging a big PVC pipe. That's a lot of food. So it's more important you put staples in there that can be used and to spread out, depending on how many more people you have. Like your rice, your flour, your sugar. You can put a small bag of coffee in there or whatever, but it's those things, like even coffee, for instance, believe it or not, that can be something used. Sugar used as a trading item also.
Yeah, coffee and cigarettes are going to be...
yes, cigarettes.
Big things.
Cool. Even if you don't put up packs in there, because that might get you some extra ammo or get you some extra food from somebody who's got more food than you do.
Right. Gold and silver as well as the essential bartering items, food. But like you had said, that would be a big PVC pipe to dig. That's why you need to get everybody in your unit, everybody in your squad and your team digging their own.
Right.
If you have 10, 12 guys and they all dig medium-sized stash or cache, that's going to last you a lot longer than just your one.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at your rally points and you put a few items there, and around your whole, you have caches all over the place. You can't keep to enough. It's just hide them. That's the biggest thing. Just hide them.
Right.
Yeah, don't forget the
Sorry, go ahead.
Toilet paper. You gotta have toilet paper. Gotta have toilet paper. If nothing else, you can barter toilet paper. When people are desperate to wipe their bum, they'll give you whatever you want for a little bit of relief. Gotta have toilet paper. Everybody takes that for granted. You don't want to have to use the 3-finger rule. Yeah,
that TP is definitely it's a very underestimated item. A lot of people don't think about. I keep 2 rolls on my pack.
With toilet paper, put it in a plastic bag, somehow waterproof it, otherwise it's ruined when it rains. Also, this was mentioned earlier, and I had meant to say something. Socks. Something that my grandfather told me a long time ago when we were going to go to camping with the Boy Scouts. He said, "So you think that's enough socks? You think those are all you're going to need for this weekend?" I said, "Yeah." And he says, "Okay, pack more."
Yep.
Absolutely. You can't have enough dry socks, and when you're trying to keep your equipment from rattling around, having extra socks around for, padding the equipment, keeping it quiet, hey, that's a win-win scenario. Like we were talking about the other day, multiple functions, for having stuff is always a good thing.
Yes. And keeping your feet healthy is very important as it is keeping your hands good.
Yeah, I was going to say, it was mentioned earlier, infections in the woods, or out in the elements without access to antibiotics and medicines. Trench foot. If it rains for 3 days and you have a pair of socks, you're getting trench foot, you're going to have an infection, and you will become a hindrance to your unit. If somebody needs to carry you out, that's 2 guys from your unit plus you that's gone.
Yes.
So you will become a hindrance if you do not prepare now, while you still can. You will ruin it for the rest of us. You will possibly cost lives, very possibly. If you're taking away force division, I guess, as opposed to force multiplication, you are going to ruin things. You are going to throw that wrench into the gears. I guess I can't say that one enough. You need to prepare now. You will end up hurting yourself or get hurt or get other people hurt.
Yeah. A lot of people already have a majority of these supplies laying around, and they don't have to go out and buy them. They just need to organize it.
Yeah, that was actually my next point. We have all these things laying around our house. Canned food, things like this, not antibiotic, regular medicines that can be helped, or that can help when you're hurt. We have this stuff lying around. And if you wait for a situation in which you're running around the house like a chicken with your head cut off, you're going to forget things.
Yes. Yep. Get it packed and organized now. Get your bug out packed. When you say bug out, everybody, I'm not bugging out. Well, you will, because if you get stuck in your house, you're dead. Unless you got 4-foot concrete walls, steel reinforced, you're screwed. You don't want to get stuck in that house. You want to get out of there. Have that bug out packed so when you run towards that door, you grab that and you're gone. You don't have to look for extra things. And if you need an extra flashlight, because it's in your bug out pack, then go buy another $3 flashlight.
Right. Don't start picking out of your pack and saying, "Oh, I'll put it back later."
Yeah. Go to the Dollar General store. Go to the, cheap places and get this stuff. Because it's going to save you a lot of money instead of going to Walmart and going to the other high dollar stores and stuff like that. Walmart, well, it's not high dollar, but yeah, it is compared to, Dollar General or something like that. There's a lot of advantages, and everybody has got something that, it's just like Dave said, TP, and and he's got a few things here in Midwest Resistance. Everybody's got ideas, so listen to everybody else, what they say. Because you may find something in there that you didn't think about, like the toilet paper. I didn't even think about that. It's something, everybody's got something to add to it, and that's what you got to remember. Everybody's important here.
Yeah, I've been saying that pretty regularly on the shows, at least once or twice. Everybody has not just a place for the militia community, but knowledge. A car mechanic, I know how to change the oil and where the gas goes.
There are some things you don't want to skimp on. You do not want to skimp on your field knife. Don't go buy an $11 China-made, freebie from the counter checkout. Get yourself a nice $30, $50, $60 knife that's going to last, a cold steel knife. Don't buy these small little crap pieces because they will fall apart.
Right. I'm not sure if I going to catch flack or anything for this, but I went up to a surplus store and I picked up a Ontario knife company. It looks just like a K-bar. It has a knife sharpener, a little pouch, and the leather sheath for it, and that was $65. Looking at the blade, it's thick, it's full tang. It seems as though it is better built than the K-bar, and I hate to say that because the K-bar is an excellent knife. But I mean,
full tang is important, and I'm glad you brought that up because they're not going to break. And pay attention to where the steel's made. Avoid the Pakistani steel. It absolutely sucks. It is not durable at all. If you get high grade U.S. steel or even Japanese steel, it's gonna hold up and it's gonna last you. But if you get cheap steel, you might as well just throw it away.
Yeah,
right. Don't skimp on the important things that you're putting away. Now, Anon2210 said, have copies of all birth certificates, phone numbers, credit card info, bank statements. That is important. And he says as a safety precaution, if you could be a little bit more specific on why. I can maybe understand the birth certificate, but phone numbers, credit card info, things like this aren't going to be useful.
Yeah. Shit hits the fan, the last thing I'm going to be worried about is my credit card and my bank statement.
Right. So, Anon, if you could be a little more specific on why we should need those things, that would be excellent. I'd appreciate that.
Yeah. And another thing he just put on, don't rely on cell phones. You should never have a cell phone on you. Ever. Right. They'll track your butt down in a heartbeat. Don't ever carry a cell phone with you. If you do, take it apart. Take the battery out, take the SIM card out, put it in a separate plastic bag, but do not have it together.
Right. Back onto the knives for a second. The Ontario knife makes a good knife, and so does SOG knives. If it's a Tonto blade, and it's a rather large knife altogether. I can't think of the maker of it right now. Kind of blanking. But just ultimately, don't skip on stuff like that.
No.
Put it away, put it in the bag, put it in the stash, do whatever you need to, and don't take it out. Unless, for whatever reason, there's surface rust on it. Or there is a reason that you need to take it out, then put it back. Don't take it out to use it, you're going to forget about it, and the next day it's going to still be sitting on the counter. A good knife is a godsend. Thank you, Randy. Go ahead, Major. Sorry about that.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to get a nice fixed blade knife, learn how to use it and keep it with you in your main gear on your LBEs. Make sure that's with you. Also a compass, and if you can get a map of your AO, that's great. But don't write on your map. Don't mark anything on your map, no matter what.
Right. Even codes, they will be deciphered, and you will be screwed.
Yeah. And as far as important numbers, don't write anything on paper.
Yep, I have to agree. Now, if you want to mark on your map some misleading stuff that's purposely misleading, hey, that might be one thing. Or if they get the map and they're at that point, chasing ghosts, that might be useful, but don't ever put any legit information on there, ever, ever, ever. That is such a good point. Just remember where the stuff's at and understand your area. Use the map and the compass. GPS is all fine and good, but it's good to be able to go old school. Map and compass does not require batteries.
Oh, not at all.
Right. That's another thing that you guys can be putting in the caches. $2 or $3 or $4 compasses. Guess what? They work. You don't have to spend $80 on one of these compasses with all the extra fun stuff in it. Forgive me, my dog is being a little crazy. I don't know if you guys can hear that or not.
Yeah.
A compass in one or two of your caches, you never know. You're probably going to need another one or two.
Have 3 or 4. I mean, those are cheap enough. You can get 3 or 4 of those, and get the simple ones, the Boy Scout ones. You can use them in your map. They're pretty durable. And learn navigation. Learn how to use it. Don't just assume, well, it just tells me north, east, west, south, that's all I need. No, there's more to it than that. If you're off 1 degree and you're traveling 20 miles, you could be 10, 20 miles off your mark if you don't know how to use that compass.
Right, and it goes back to preparing now. Obviously, things are getting interesting. We need to prepare now, and this is where effective training comes into play, and learning what you learned as a Boy Scout and as an Eagle Scout for some of us. I'm sure some of my listeners are Eagle Scouts. That's one thing, but military people who were in battle, life and death situations in which they had to navigate their way out of those things, they are going to be very effective trainers, and you need to get people who have been there and who have had the bullets zipping past their heads. You need them to train you. Watching things on YouTube and all of this stuff is just so ridiculous sometimes. These people have no idea what they're talking about. And I'm probably not going to make any friends saying this, but the NRA instructors, they have good stuff. I'm not saying that it's bad, but you cannot rely on that in combat situation. Even some of the concealed carry things that they teach, I mean, it's not going to... you can't count on that, is basically what I'm saying. You need to get everything that you can, all of the knowledge that you can stuff inside your brain, especially from our veterans.
Yes. Sergeant Gould made a comment there, overlays. Overlays can be dangerous. The Japanese use those, and we figured those out pretty easy. So I would say just remember in your head where your stuff is, because overlays can be used against you.
Right. Taking a quick step back to what Dave had mentioned about false information. I had talked about that last week as well. Diversion, things like that. You can use anything to divert or distract, or as Cav Scout said in the first Guerrillas in the Midst, besiege way to rescue Zhao, one of the 36 stratagems. That's a big thing, and you need to be sitting there right now while we have the time and thinking about what you can do. Thinking about effective diversion tactics. Just constantly having a tactical mindset about what could happen and how you will react, what will and will not work, and then speak with people about it and talk about your plans, because 9 times out of 10, I come up with something that sounds great and it sounds flawless, and then I talk to my buddy and he says this, and it takes everything, it turns everything to garbage. Because it's the one thing that you didn't think about. But guess what? He's a veteran. He's seen it. He knows what happened.
Yeah.
You know, this is, we need to prepare now, and we need to have the right training and the proper preparations in place, because we are the militia. People take that name way too lightly. If you are saying that you are militia, constitutional American militia, you are putting your ass on the line. You are signing a blank check. Your ass is signing that check, and it is payable to the people.
Yes.
If you have to go to war for this country and for its people, that is what you are supposed to do as militia.
Yes.
And if you take that too lightly, I am very salty on the subject. I am not happy with a lot of the people out there who claim to be militia when they are not preparing, they are not thinking about these things. Guess what? That's your job.
Right. Yeah. I'm seeing here a lot of people are saying, Gulo and Anon are saying the multi-tools, Leatherman tools. Again, I'll say keep it simple. Those, I don't know how many people have had Leathermans and stuff like that they've broken down on them. It doesn't, how many people are going to need a screwdriver out in the woods? It's good to have one of those, but you should still have your knife, the tools individualized, because if they break down, you can put a multi-tool in your cache, yes. Like Midwest Resistance said, throw a green tarp or a camo tarp in there. That's good too, but as far as I can use my poncho that's camoed, and I have a rain coat that's camoed also that I can use for shelter, or my basic tent. Olive drab works good too when you throw stuff on it and break up the lines. Good camo. You got to understand that good camo is something you really need to know.
It's an interesting point about the multi-tool. Yeah, you should never let that replace your good knife. Ever, 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 ever. And if you are going to get a multi-tool, don't get one of those dollar store multi-tools. Get a real Leatherman, something that's got half a chance of lasting a little while, because there's a lot of clones out there that will break the first time you use them, and that's not going to be any good to you at all.
Just the new and best stuff doesn't always mean it's the greatest. Like a lot of my stuff is old, and it's still very functional today. The basic K-bar, like Midwest Resistance set, that's one of the thickest, best tools you can have, besides your E-tool. And that's something you just don't try to multi-tool these things together, because that is something that will bite you in the end.
Unless you're MacGyver.
Yes. Because if it's breaks, you're screwed.
It goes back to finding out about your multi-tool, how successful it will be, working on effective camouflage, concealment. You're not going to read a book and understand everything. It's not going to happen. The only way you're going to do it is by getting your butt out there and practicing and training and doing everything that you need to do and learning everything you need to learn now.
Yeah. I could see this stuff's going to be important for you even if there's a natural disaster. You got your cash out there and your house gets destroyed by, like they did down in Missouri. You still got food, water, medical supplies and stuff available to you right away. And you don't have to wait for FEMA to come in. The hell with FEMA. If you can't do it yourself, then you're a liberal. That's the way I look at it. Wait for them to take care of you. Me, I don't need the government holding my hand.
Right, I don't think any of us do. And that is where the committees of safety come in, and having that effective civil subordination. But that's for another show. Never leave home. I'm sorry, I need to mute out for 1 second, guys.
Okay. Yeah, your equipment is very important, but basics. That's the first thing you need to work with, because that's the stuff that you're going to need most of all.
As important as equipment is, I would say training is even more important.
Yes. Yeah, you've got to know how to use your stuff. That's like on our FTXs. Even if we're not going to be shooting, I tell everybody, bring your guns with you. Because if you're not used to carrying them, you're going to be fumbling around with them. Always carry them with you. Get to know that baby. It's something that's going to be very, very important. But, Yeah, it's just like Charlie Mike is on there. He's got several guns or knives listed. Yeah, you should have more than one knife. I have 3, so and they all have different purposes. But that K-bar, that's the first one you should get. Then a boot knife.
Right, knives have different purposes. Me personally, I carry a 2.75-inch quick draw, partially serrated blade, and I carry that in a sheath on my belt. I have a pocket knife that is a straight edge with a seatbelt cutter and a window punch, and in my back pocket I carry a little lower end. It's made by Ruco. It's a blade with a serrated edge. I have everything on my belt in terms of knives that I could possibly need. Seatbelt cutter and the window punch, awesome. That's useful. Gonna need it probably. And if you have to ask yourself whether or not you're gonna need it, the answer is yes. The little lower end Ruco in the back pocket that's got the serrated blade, that is a tool. That is the rough and tough knife.
For instance, plus Charlie Mike's surgical instruments. That's very important. You could go into what your basics are for your medical kit, but someone had never done it before. You may have to tell somebody they get a gash in their leg or something like that. You may have to sew it up. It's just, and Ann and I believe before said something about alcohol. A good bottle of whiskey in that cache isn't a bad idea either. It can be used as a disinfectant. That's, you got to sew somebody's leg up. Get them drunk, then do it.
Yeah, that was something I read in a book of mine. A bottle of whiskey is good if you need to stitch somebody up. Give them a couple shots and pour it on there when you're done.
Yep.
Also goes back to cigarettes and coffee. That will become a barter tool. People are going to miss that. And things that are of sentimental value and of basically just morale. Whiskey, coffee, cigarettes, all those things will boost morale. Just a pack of cigarettes. At least for smokers. I know. Coffee is just...
That's important in my pack.
It really is. But I think we're going to close out tonight. Any last statements, guys?
Well, heck, I can't really think of much that we hadn't covered or haven't said. Be sure you get your equipment in order. There is no such thing as too much training and practice. Other than that, stay safe, stay free.
Yeah, and if anybody wants, I've got in the handbook, it's up there, but I can get you more information. But there's an emergency preparedness list, too, that lists a lot of different items. If you see something that's not listed on there, make a comment that we need to add to it. We will add to it, because, that's something we'll always be updating or changing, replacing it with something else. But I need everybody's help out there. If you got an idea, go to the OHMM website. Put that and something in there that you want to add to, put it up there. I don't know where it's from. You got to, we'll use it.
And for the people who are listening to the archives, that website is ohiominutemen.webs.com. Check out the manual. And everything else is under Documents tab on the top. Like the Major said, he welcomes all kinds of helpful additions or suggestions. So do I. I want to be doing the show off of what you guys want to hear, and basically what's most useful to the militia community at large. And to be honest, I haven't gotten too much feedback from my listeners. So if you guys didn't like something or you want to hear something or anything, please email me, contact me. My Skype name is Skyfox, ILSL. You can add me. I'd love to have a conversation with you if you got something to say, if you got something you want to hear on the show. You can email me as fox0911@hushmail.com. Get a hold of me. Let me know what you guys want to hear. I'm doing the show for the militia by a militiaman. And, I have these guests on, and I'm kind of doing everything hoping that you guys are enjoying everything. And I love doing the show. I love having you guys on, especially like tonight. A very useful night. But
it almost always is. We've been talking about some really useful things. We've got to get prepared, and that's the God's honest truth about it. I just want to throw one more thing in real quick. We're going to be doing a rebroadcast of this show immediately following when we sign off here on You Have Tread on Me Radio. You can get to that, youhavetreadonme.com/radio. That's for anybody listening on UWS Radio or ICRN, which did finally kick in. I'm not sure what the problem was there in the beginning. Apologize for that. But if you wanted to catch the beginning of the show that you might have missed, you can definitely come to youhavetreadonme.com/radio. And if anybody wants to know more about amateur radio, go to ARRL.org, or you can send me an email at david@youhavetreadonme.com. And if you want to be added to our show notification mailing list, email randymac@youhavetreadonme.com, and we'll add you to that. That's all I got. Thanks, Fox.
Well, thanks for doing everything for me, Dave, doing all the producing and all that stuff. Give props to you. And I'm glad to hear that everything got going through with ICRN out there in the UK. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for tuning in from the UK. I really do appreciate that. I think we're going to get out of here. Major, thank you so much for coming on. I really do appreciate the short notice and coming on. And you always welcome to come on. Always very useful information, and I really love having you on.
Anytime you need help.
Well, thank you, sir. Well, with that, ladies and gentlemen, stand your ground. Don't fire unless fired upon. But if they mean to have a war, then let it begin here. Stay frosty, folks.